Hey folks, today we're going to take a look at the Guild Starter Box and how it plays. It includes 4 versatile models with the Vanguard Keyword. It also comes with a measuring widget, 10 scheme markers, the Fate deck, basically everything you'd need to get started as Guild in Malifaux. The minis also have these cool transparent shield bits. And because they're all versatile, they can be included in any Guildmaster's crew. A big thank you to Wyrd for sending me this box, and with that, let's take a look at how these models work on the table. Let's start with the henchman of the box, Commander Bura. She's a cheap henchman at 7 cost, and being a henchman means she can use soul stones for stuff like needed suits in a duel. She has standard stats for defense, move, and size 2, with a slight increase to her willpower to 6. And her health is about average for her cost, which is at 7. But this can be deceiving when considering her abilities, as well as using soul stones for damage reduction. She displays the heart of this box's theme of shielding by her ability Under My Protection. During the start phase, all friendly Vanguard models gain Shielded 1. This is a pretty awesome passive ability because it's not associated with any range or line of sight. So this will help out the other models from the box even if they're all the way over on the other side of the table. And it doesn't cost you any resources to do so. Not only that, at the start of her activation, she and 2 other friendly models with an Aura 4 gain an additional Shielded 1, so it doubly assists when placed close to the other models. The big part of this portion of the ability is that this additional shielding is not associated with the Vanguard Keyword, so you can give shielding to other models in the crew even if they don't come with this box. To increase the effectiveness of shielding, she has the ability called Shields Up. Normally, when shielded and taking damage, you can only reduce the damage once with your shields. Shields Up allows her to ignore this limitation and is able to use it any number of times, meaning if she has enough shielding on her, she can reduce a damage 3 attack to 0 damage. Shielding alone is a pretty good defensive measure to decrease damage, but Commander Bura can do additional offensive abilities with this buff up. For example, her ability Shielded Bullets gives her a 6-inch aura, allowing a friendly model to lower their shielding by 1 to ignore shielded and incorporeal. This is only allowed once per activation and can be situational, but when the situation comes up, it can be a surprise to your opponents and help finish off those difficult to kill models with these defensive measures. And I find the once per activation limit to not be too restrictive in exchange for its usefulness. And her last front of card ability is called Resupply, which upon activation allows her to draw any non-Joker card from your discard pile with a value of 5 or less. Sure, it's a weak card, but she only needs a 5 for both of her tactical actions, and you can always find a use for weak cards for other abilities in the crew, or if you find that you need to discard a junk card for opposing abilities. And if it's a 5 of Rams, then you'll easily get the triggers of her 2 tactical actions for a free resource. So if at the start of your turn you happen to use a soul stone to cycle 2 cards, and you got a 5 of Rams in hand, discard it so that you can pick it up later. So what's on the back of her card? Let's take a look at her attack, starting with Crushing Force. This is a 10-inch ranged attack with a 5 stat that includes a built-in mask and targets move. The fact that it targets move is great because there are far fewer defensive triggers for move values, and you can generally count on the resist value being 5 for most models. Successfully hitting will do 2/3/3 damage, which isn't spectacular, sure, but it can slightly be improved by the fact that it ignores shielded and incorporeal. So in that type of situation, it effectively bypasses a point of damage reduction, and also doubles with the fact that she won't ever have to use her shielded bullets on herself for this attack, saving a point of shield. Her trigger Get In There requires a mask, which we conveniently have built in, and it allows a friendly minion in line of sight of the target to push 3 inches toward the target. Lucky for us, we have 2 minions included in this box, and they love to get closer to their targets. And there's no range to this benefit. As long as they can see what you're attacking, any minion, Vanguard or not, can get some free movement. And free movement in this game can be extremely powerful. Successfully doing this attack twice can give your Battering Rams 6 inches of movement outside of their activation. Now her other attack, her sword, is a 1-inch melee attack with a stat 6 against defense, so a bit above average to hit. The damage track is 2, 3, 4. Nothing to write home about, but it has a tome trigger called Field Kit, which heals a friendly model in Aura 3 range for 1, 2, or 3. This can be useful considering that with Under My Protection, there's a good chance you're close to other models, but since the tome isn't built in and the damage isn't amazing, I see this as a last-ditch defensive measure when you're caught by enemies, especially when considering how useful her Crushing Force attack is. But hey, it's there if you need it. An example of its use is if you find that you have another friendly model that's taking some hits and is a little bit far away and maybe close to dying, you can use a charge to gain some movement to get within range of this aura, hit an enemy, and use a tome or a soul stone for the trigger to perform some healing. If the enemies in range of your friend have already activated for the turn, then you double up your chances of their survival when the next turn starts and they gain additional shielding from Commander Bura's Under My Protection. This may be resource intensive, being that you'll probably want to use a high card to secure the hit and maybe a soul stone for the trigger, as well as maybe a card to cheat the heal if really necessary, but it can be a crucial play in the right circumstances. Now, on to our tactical actions, beginning with Remember the Mission. It's a 4-inch range, has a stat 7, and needs at least a 5 to hit the target number of 12 to succeed. Luckily, we have that resupply we mentioned to help secure the resource needed for this, but even without it, there's a fairly good chance you can flip its success off the top of the deck. This ability allows a friendly model that hasn't been targeted by this action in the activation to take an interact action even when engaged. Being that laying down ski markers or interacting with models is a major factor in scoring points in this game, this can literally be game winning when used properly. And the fact that one of the best ways to deny enemy points is to engage models to prevent the interact action gets mitigated with this ability. The action features a ram trigger called This Will Numb the Pain, giving the target an additional shield, helping add some synergy to her shielding buffs mentioned earlier. And don't forget, because this is a tactical action, she can target herself, fueling her shielding stuff and getting interact actions when engaged. Now, the last ability for her card is her tactical bonus action, Overload. It's a 6-inch range with a stat 5 and needs at least a 5 to hit the target number. Cue the usefulness of her resupply action. It can only target friendly models, but if successful, enemy models within a Pulse 2 range of the target must pass a target 12 move duel or suffer damage equal to the target's shielded condition. So all the stuff we talked about earlier that increases shielding can really force some difficult flips for the opponent in a crowded circumstance. But keep in mind that this is to a maximum of 3 damage. So if we consider, say, her Crushing Force attack that can give her Battering Rams up to 6 inches of movement to a target, you can get that minion right in the middle of the crowd in her activation, and use this bonus action to force a ton of flips, and maybe eat up 1 or 2 of your opponent's control cards. Now, this ability also features a ram trigger, which isn't built in unfortunately, and it also has the additional restriction of needing your friend Bracer to be within 6 inches of Commander Bura, but if all those dominoes happen to be in place, you can further increase the target number of the move duel to a 14. With a good portion of the move stats being 5, there's a good chance that with this activated, your opponent will need 9s to prevent the damage, and can really eat up cards from their hand or deal a significant amount of damage all around. Taking away a few mid-valued cards for a bonus action isn't a bad trade. With all of these abilities considered together, she can be a surprisingly tanky support character at her cost that can fit in well in almost any crew composition that could benefit from some damage reduction or movement shenanigans. Or if you identify that there's a good chance you'll deal with your opponents having shielding or incorporeal when you declare masters at the beginning of the game. She really offers a lot to your crew in both being able to fill in weak gaps of your crew, like say needing interact actions, or you could use a little bit more survivability, or enhance strengths like your mobility or discards by forcing more flips with Overload. If your planned crew likes to be close together, her Under My Protection ability can be a real point of frustration for your opponents. But she also has some weak points, like if an opposing model also has the ability to circumvent damage reduction like shielding, her 7 health can be whittled away fairly quickly, and with her gone, a lot of synergies will also disappear. She's also not a huge source of damage on her own, so if you start losing other crew models, she's likely not going to be able to turn the tide by herself outside of maybe sitting and surviving on a key location longer than the average model. And she can be resource intensive. Sure, she can maybe get a card to help with her tactical actions, but those actions don't have built-in triggers, and her sword doesn't either. Not to mention, the other Vanguard models may need that card. So there's a possibility that you'll soak up soulstones just to use them. A high card to secure success, all while possibly using stones to keep her alive if caught on her own. I also can see that her shielded bullets and shields up may reduce her or her Vanguard model's shielding down to 0 fast. Although it's great to know that you can use shielding any number of times, this can quickly reduce your effectiveness after several hard-hitting attacks, as you'll need that condition up for stuff like Overload to be useful. But let's look at the other models in the box to see how these weaknesses may be mitigated or synergies further enhanced, like with Bracer. She's a cheap 6 cost enforcer with a higher defense of 6, and the rest of her stats are average at 5 willpower and move, as well as 6 for health. But just like with Commander Bura, these numbers can be deceiving. Let's start with her ability, Arcane Resonance. When her activation starts, if a friendly master or henchman is within Aura 6 range, you get to draw a card. And if Commander Bura is within Aura 6, you can have either Bracer or Commander Bura end any number of conditions on themselves. Find yourself on fire? Well, for the low cost of existing close to your buddy, you aren't anymore. Conditions can be a killer in this game against the right crew, as there are several crews that build up fire or poison, or you can remove debilitating conditions like slow right at the start of your activation. And free card draw is always powerful in this game. This ability definitely enforces the fact that you're likely wanting to keep Bracer close to Commander Bura for these extra benefits, especially when you consider Bura's abilities like Under My Protection. Her next ability is Arcane Shield. It gives her a free shield at the start phase. Commander Bura's Under My Protection will also give her another shield regardless of how close she is. And if she's within Aura 4 of her, then she could possibly get a third shield on top. Now her 6th health doesn't look so bad considering that she can reduce 3 damage at the start of each turn. And just like Commander Bura, she also has shields up, so she can reduce damage with shielding any number of times as an attack. Now, we discussed Commander Bura's movement shenanigans with her attack Crushing Force for minions, but Bracer's got a few of her own. Her ability, Herald, lets her get a free 6-inch move at the start of the game, and her On the Move ability lets her get a free 3-inch move at the start of her activation, and this can ignore other models. So if you find that you're caught in a melee you don't want to be in, well, she's not going to be caught for long. Moving on to the back of her card, one of her attacks is called Shield Slam. It's a 1-inch melee with a stat of 5 that includes a built-in ram and hits defense. If you succeed, it actually doesn't do a damage flip like a typical attack. It instead does 1 damage to the target, who is then pushed up to 2 inches in any direction. Sure, this damage is super weak, but it also means you won't be flipping a Black Joker either. Now, with that built-in ram, you can use her first trigger called Collision. This makes the target and other enemy models within Pulse 1 range to suffer an additional 1 damage. So not only do we not risk flipping a Black Joker on damage, this stacking of damage means it's great against models with high armor, as they'll suffer 2 separate instances of 1 damage where their armor doesn't really do any mitigation. And if you're really piled in there on bunched up enemies, the additional damage to them can start to add up, especially considering that you push the target first before this trigger comes into play, allowing you to choose the best resulting placement for optimal damage. But if you're looking for additional traditional damage on a single target, well, her mask trigger, Quick Shot, can help with that, allowing Bracer to take an additional ranged attack action even if she's still engaged after the push. This additional attack won't generate a trigger, but the extra damage is always welcome. Let's talk about that ranged attack, Collier Pistol. It's a 12-inch ranged attack at stat 5 resisting defense. It's got a typical damage track of 2, 3, 4, but features a tome trigger called Rations. It's enemy only, but after resolving the attack, a friendly model within 3 inches of Bracer gets an extra shielding, and you can target yourself for this buff. This can help her considering that with her shield slam, you may find Bracer in the middle of a giant pile of enemies. Well, with her starting the turn with possibly 3 shields, and shield slam adding a possible 4th, she's got a good chance of surviving retaliation. And with her tactical bonus action, Shield Generator, she may get one more. This action is a stat 7 with a built-in ram and needs a 5 to succeed the target number of 12. Commander Bura's resupply can help ensure you have a 5 in hand if needed, and it just gives her one more shield. Her ram being built in means that you won't need the resupply card to be a 5 of ram for further effectiveness for her trigger, Stay in Formation. This allows one friendly model in line of sight, sharing the Vanguard keyword, to push 3 inches toward Bracer. This can synergize extremely well with Commander Bura's Crushing Force attack that we talked about earlier, giving that Battering Ram who benefited from a possible 6-inch push to an additional 3-inch push toward Bracer. Her other tactical action is called Heroic Intervention. It's got a 6-inch range with a stat 5 needing a 6 to hit the target of 11, so resupply won't help in this instance, but you still have a fairly decent chance of flipping into it. It can only target enemies, but it allows you to push all other friendly models within 1 inch of the target 5 inches away from it, giving them an incredible amount of free movement. Move that Battering Ram who got 9 inches of movement into base contact with an enemy, and Heroic Intervention to get the Battering Ram to move 5 inches more past them to hit that back line or place a scheme marker in enemy territory. After that, you push Bracer 6 inches toward the target, and after that, Bracer can take a free melee action against it. Talk about movement shenanigans. Although you can't declare triggers with this attack, you can still push the target 2 inches if you want. With all these abilities together, this makes Bracer an extremely mobile and fairly tanky melee disruptor. She can generate shielding fairly well on her own with Arcane Shield and Shield Generator, as well as her Collier Pistol trigger, but you'll likely want to keep her close to Commander Bura and your Master for extra shields and card draw. In a pinch, she can charge right into enemy models to get your friendlies out of the way, or even to give them a huge boost of free movement to achieve their goals or hit other targets. The ability to end conditions like slow keeps her efficient, and drawing cards is always great. She's got a few cons though. She isn't a heavy damage dealer, doing plink damage with her shield slam, and her pistol is average. Just like Commander Bura, ignoring shields will get Bracer killed pretty quickly. She also needs to stick fairly close to the crew for optimal efficiency, making them vulnerable to blasts, and if the enemy has movement shenanigans of their own, she can easily be pushed or forced out of position with stuff like Lure or Obey with her 5 willpower. But if you need mobility and a bit of stickiness, she's great to fill in your crew's gaps. But take into consideration that Commander Bura is a must-have to have in addition to Bracer in this crew. Now on to the last models of the boxed set. The Battering Rams. The box comes with 2 of them, and they're a 6 cost minion with 5 health, sporting a meaty 6 defense but a terrible 4 willpower. Their move is at an average 5, but just like the other folks in the keyword, their stats can be deceiving. Like Bracer and Commander Bura, the Battering Rams have shields up, making it so that they can reduce their shielding by any number of times when suffering damage. And remember those movement shenanigans we talked about before? Well, with building momentum, once per activation, they will gain a shield when they end a move generated by a friendly model. We'll touch more on that one later. Their ability, Breaching Charge, allows the Battering Ram to ignore terrain and other models when they take the charge action, making them a bit more mobile than the average model. In addition to that, their charges can generate a slam action instead of a melee action, making them useful in the situation where you're going against crews that generate destructible terrain markers. The last ability on the front of their card is called Heavy Impact, which is allowed once per activation. After this model ends a push in base contact with a model or impassable terrain, enemy models in a 1-inch pulse range must pass a target 11 defense duel or suffer 1 damage. The Battering Ram has access to several different pushes, from Bracer's Heroic Intervention, Bracer's Shield Generator trigger, heck, Bracer can Shield Slam targeting the Battering Ram themselves, but also Commander Bura's Crushing Force, and not to mention when the Battering Ram charges, it's considered a push. So there'll be plenty of opportunities to use Heavy Impact for some forced flips, and can result in several instances of plinking some damage or your opponent needing to use some of those control cards. Moving on to the back of the card, we've got the Battering Ram's attacks, starting with the Sword. It's a 1-inch melee with a stat 5 that resists defense, with a damage track of 2, 3, 4. Overall pretty average. The first trigger, Bowled Over, requires a mask and pushes the target 4 inches away from the Battering Ram, and then follows up with a push on themselves 4 inches toward the target. This trigger is great for moving enemy models out of position and isolating them, or possibly moving them so that you can get further back into the backline. The second trigger, requiring a mask, is called Defensive Reflexes, and gives the Battering Ram an extra shield, which comes in handy in making this model survive retaliation, and considering that this model tends to like to charge into the thick of things, it's a super great tool to have in hand. This sword attack is likely to be the main one used by this model, as they have tons of movement options, but let's take a look at its ranged attack, the Throw Knife. The Throw Knife has an 8-inch range and has a stat of 5 resisting defense. It has a lower damage track of 1, 3, 4, but if the target happens to suffer severe damage, the Battering Ram can place itself into base contact with the target, placing them in a position they'd likely rather be, which is in melee. Being able to hit severe damage consistently is probably not a minion's strong suit, at least not usually without having to spend a good card likely meant for a different model. But with the Ram trigger Puncture, you'd be able to get a positive flip for the damage for every Ram to a maximum of 2. So maybe you luck into flipping a Ram right off the bat, who knows? Or perhaps you'd like to attack everyone's hidden weakness, their retinas. Well, with the Crow trigger, my eye! The target suffers +1 damage and is pushed up to 3 inches away from this model. Also, the push occurs first before the placement. I'll be honest, with my thoughts, I find this attack highly situational. Sure, it may be worth it alone to announce the trigger, my eye! Or maybe you want to use Commander Bura's Shielded Bullets to hit a shielded or incorporeal model with a ranged attack. Or maybe you want to push a model off of a control point. But at an 8-inch range, I'd likely find a way to get into melee with this model. For example, the Battering Ram's tactical action, Take the Fight to Them. This is a bonus action with an aura of 4 inches and a stat of 5, meaning you'll need at least a 7 to hit the target number of 12. With this ability, until the end phase, when a friendly model within range declares a charge, it may increase the distance it pushes by 2 inches up to a maximum of 7 inches. I believe this to be one of, if not the best ability the Battering Ram has to offer. And because it's an aura, it includes the Battering Ram itself. So if you are within 8 inches of a target, instead of using your throwing knife, you could just spend a 7 to make a 7-inch charge and be within 1 inch of your melee attack. And this helps everyone in range, not just those who share the Vanguard Keyword. So if you have a crew that needs a little extra movement on charges, this is the model for you. The other tactical action the Battering Ram has is a shield generator. Just like Bracer's, although it doesn't have a trigger like hers does. It's a stat 7, needing a 5 to succeed at its target number of 12. Hey, look at that, another ability that benefits from Commander Bura's resupply. This ability will give the Battering Ram an additional shield, which is great, but keep in mind that it's also another bonus action, so you won't be able to do both shield generator and Take the Fight to Them in the same round. Still, it's a great defensive option to increase their already overloaded amount of shielding. With everything combined, this model becomes a great charging support model. They can really move their way across the board, all while gaining shields along the trail. Commander Bura can give them a shield with Under My Protection, heck, maybe 2. and can move them by attacking twice with Crushing Force, gaining a shield from building momentum and pushing maybe a total of 6 inches. If the Battering Ram pushes into base contact with the enemy, Heavy Impact can force a target 11 defense flip. Bracer can activate next using our Collier pistol to get the tome trigger, Rations, with a control card to give the Battering Ram yet another shield. Then Bracer can go in on the target using Heroic Intervention, pushing the Battering Ram 5 inches away and gaining a shield from building momentum yet again. That's a total of 11 inches of movement and up to 5 shields, all before a Battering Ram even activates. That'll certainly help with their below average health of 5 and get them to where they need to go. And when the Battering Ram activates, they can use Take the Fight to them, move 5 inches and charge 7 to really hit that backline. Now, this isn't to say that the Battering Rams don't have a downside. Their 4 willpower definitely puts them at risk from obey and lure actions, where having Take the Fight to them may just be your downfall. And just like the others, if there is a model that ignores damage reduction like shields, the Rams will fold like origami. Even if the enemy doesn't ignore shields, once they're out of the shields, they won't last very long. And also with all their movements, there's a high chance that after you use them up, they'll be out of range from further support and they're all on their own. Not to mention that although they charge really well, their damage output is average. And outside of being in range of Commander Bura's shielded bullets, they don't really have any way of circumventing damage reduction. So don't count on them on making models disappear on their own. Like the rest of the box, they are more defensive and maneuverable rather than damage dealers, to which you'll need to rely on the core crew that are brought with them to do so. Now with all that said, this is a great box to add to your guild collection or for you to start on one. Together they add some defensive and mobility options to your crew. I know I didn't go over everything that they could possibly do, especially when you consider the other masters they can be attached to. Make sure to leave a comment below telling everyone here how you use these awesome models. And if you had a fun time watching this video, please be sure to leave a like and subscribe and let me know if you'd like to see more of these types of model breakdowns. Who knows, with 4th edition right around the corner, maybe you'd like to see this style of video on how to play the new edition. Let me know, I'd love to hear from you, and with that, I'll see you next time.